what if somebody does feel called to the online space?
Calling is really about being called to a people.
If I got this following tomorrow, how do I steward this?
Jesus had to grow in wisdom and stature. We all have to do that too.
I loved working in a church, and yet that's not where God has me.
Throw the rock into the middle of the lake, and I will be in charge of the ripples.
I've actually heard so much negativity in this area from leaders. Welcome to Upside Down Influencer, where we talk about the things we see on social media and how we as Christ followers can do them differently. I'm your host, Jessica Johnson. As you can see, I am not in my normal spot at my kitchen table. I am in fact in our office and do not even have my sign up because today is my first digital interview with Kadi Cole. Kadi is a best-selling author, a leadership coach, and she helps so many people step into their calling and do the thing that God has created them to do. So today we talked all about what if you feel really called to do something? What if you feel called to ministry, but God does not currently have you out of church? Maybe you're a stay-at-home mom. Maybe you're mowing lawns. Maybe you're in the military. How do we be faithful and obedient where we are and have the right eyes to see that that in fact is ministry? Additionally, what if you do feel called to social media? What if you're supposed to step into the online space? How do we ready our hearts for that? There are things that you can be doing right now in the season that you're in, whether you have 20 followers or 2,000. Kadi encouraged me so much in this episode, and I left feeling like I had a little bit more clarity. Here's my conversation with Kadi Cole. Kadi, thank you so much for coming to Upside Down Influencer.
Well, thank you, Jessica. I'm really excited about what you're doing and just who you're becoming as you figure this podcast stuff out. So thanks for having me as a guest.
So a fun question that I like to ask my guests: if you were to become a social media influencer and have your own niche account, what do you think that would be?
Ooh, if it was just like for fun for myself.
Just for fun.
Oh, it would have to be like mugshot of the day. So I am a very big coffee mug person. I have a ridiculous collection of coffee mugs. And so I like to, when something big happens in my life, I'll often find a coffee mug that reminds me of it. Or if I'm needing to kind of like, if I feel like the Lord's teaching me something, a lot of times I'll find a mug that kind of captures that. I love receiving mugs with sentiments as gifts. And every morning I go to my cupboard and like open it, and I've got all my collection and it's displayed so I can read them all. And I kind of choose my mug for the day. And as I've talked about this, there are people who are totally like me. Like it's almost like an outfit. It kind of like sets my tone for the day. So I would do something around like everyone puts their, their mugshot of what their coffee cup of the day is and why that's like. So today I have the Go For It mug because I'm launching a bunch of stuff in my work world this week. And I'm at that, like, I'm 3 days away from the launch. So I'm editing things that aren't right, and this person didn't do their job right. And so I've got like all this stress, like, is it going to happen? Will we pull it together? Will it turn out to be terrible? I've got all that stuff. And I remember the day the Lord told me to go for it. And so I'm just reminding myself of that today.
I need to know, how many mugs do you have?
Oh, for those of you who are just listening, by the way, my mug is like a little beehive theme, and it says "Go For It," which beehives are also like the story of Deborah and doing big things outside of the norm. So I have over 100 for sure. So no,
my jaw just dropped. Oh my gosh. Now, do you keep them all in there at one time, or do you rotate them out seasonally?
No, I have Christmas mugs that I keep with my Christmas stuff that I pull out for the season, but everything else is there. And I do coaching and life plans in my home. And so that's kind of part of it, is you get to choose your mug for the day. And yeah, so
that would be so fun. Yeah, that's a great idea. I'm thinking about how not many cupboards I have, and I would just be overstimulated. I'm like, oh gosh, and then I would regret it later because I'm like, I liked that mug. Why did I throw that away?
Yes, I never purge the mugs. I don't really ever purge the mugs. I have the ones from my kid as he was growing up. Like when he got into this really great high school, I bought a mug at their merch shop at one of the games. So I just always remember that big moment of him getting accepted into that school he really wanted. So it's things like that. So
yeah, I'm kind of like that with Christmas ornaments. Like I collect them based on, something meaningful. Yes. In my life.
I have a terrible memory. And so for me, a lot of it is kind of just reviewing, kind of like how in the Old Testament, God told us to put up altars to remember things. It's kind of like my altar space. It's the way I remember those things that really are special between the Lord and me, or things he's done, or things I'm especially grateful for and want to remember. So it's a deep, not everyone has deepness about mugs for sure, or other things, but I think we all have ways that we stay connected with what God has done and his faithfulness in our lives. So coffee mugs just happen to be mine.
I love that. I got to think of one for myself. So I like that a lot. But for people who may not know you, do you mind going ahead and just telling us about yourself and your journey to where you are today?
Oh, sure. Thank you. Well, gosh, that's a big question. I grew up in the Northwest in Montana, in a really small little town. I kind of didn't realize how big the world was as I was growing up. I went to college and became a nurse. I thought maybe God was calling me to missions, foreign missions, and I ended up on scholarship that took me to South Florida to fulfill my scholarship obligation after I graduated from college. I thought I would always go back to the Northwest. I was a total Northwest girl, and I ended up in South Florida. And I'm in my mid-50s now, so that was 30 years ago. And looking back now, I can see that actually was my calling to what for me was a foreign mission field, because the culture and the dynamics and even the spiritual tone of the Pacific Northwest versus South Florida was really different. It was like going to a foreign country, different nationalities, different economic separation that I hadn't really experienced before. Even the Christian world had a lot of diversity in it. And so I spent the next 30 years, I was a nurse in a hospital, and then I ran a health center at a Christian college. And then in the middle of that, my church I was attending and volunteering at started growing really rapidly. We started doubling in size every year. And so when we hit about 3,000, they asked if I would come on staff. And by that time I was married and we were looking to have a family. And I thought, oh, this will be great. I'll totally downshift my professional life and do something easy like ministry. And kind of have babies and be in the church world. And it wasn't like that at all. It was actually really challenging. And so I came on staff when we were at about 3,000. And then almost 20 years later, transitioned off staff when we hit about 23,000. We had 9 campuses. I oversaw all of the campus pastors, started our school of leadership and a college on site. And so I just sort of grew in leadership with my church during those 20 years. And then almost 10 years ago now, transitioned off my staff team and started helping multi-site churches and church leaders do more with their own multi-site church planting, multiplication, leadership development. And so that's really been my work that I've done the last 10 years, is trying to help equip church leaders. And in the process of that, kind of stumbled into this issue around women in leadership in churches.
Yes.
And for people who've been around the church for a while, you won't be surprised that this is kind of a big hot topic. I was probably a little naive about it, honestly, because I was a woman and I got to lead at very high levels in a variety of different environments. But as I was coaching churches and helping them with their mission, I would stumble into these conversations where these great guys that were leading churches wanted to use women in leadership, wanted to put them in roles of leadership. They had theological questions. The way they were approaching it wasn't quite right. They would say things that sounded good to them, but I knew probably did not feel good to these women. And so I started researching, trying to help these churches do a better job with female leadership capacity. And in the process, did a bunch of research, and out of that came this book called Developing Female Leaders, which I really had never thought I would be a big, raising the flag for women leaders. I didn't think of myself as writing a book on it for sure. But now 10 years later, it's really been some of the main work that I do is helping churches create better environments for female leaders, helping them implement their theologies wherever they are on the spectrum to fully access all of those giftings, helping women know how to step into higher level leadership roles that maybe they've never seen a woman do before, or they're wondering if it's okay, or how do I do this? And so I'm just trying to help move that topic forward in the kingdom. In my little neck of the woods. And so far it's kept me very busy.
Yeah, no kidding. Wow. Thank you for sharing all of that. What a journey. And it sounds like also you're no stranger to what it's like to be both in ministry, but also doing ministry not in a church setting.
Oh, absolutely.
Which is what this whole episode is about. Because for me right now, I'm in a very interesting place in life. I am currently a stay-at-home mom. And I have another one due literally in a few weeks.
Congratulations. That's very exciting.
Thank you. Thank you so much. We're getting excited, but also I have a lot to do still. I'm like, oh my gosh. Like I'm like ready for him to be here, but not ready for him to be here quite yet. But when the Lord had me transition out of my church job, I had this sense of almost like, I want to be back in there. Like, I want to be back in the church. And even now, as a stay-at-home mom and even doing this podcast, there'll be times where I glamorize in my mind the job that I used to have. And don't get me wrong, I loved my job. I loved working in a church. I feel incredibly called to ministry. It's just on my heart. And yet that's not where God has me right now. And I think I tend to put in a bucket, like so many others do, that ministry has to be in a church. And I know it doesn't. Like if I was giving somebody else advice, I would tell them, you're doing ministry where you are. And, I know the right things to say. And yet I myself will fall into that trap. And so, yeah, I would love to hear a little bit about, your experience maybe outside the church and how, because now you don't work in a church, correct?
Correct.
But what you're doing is ministry.
Yeah, well, I think, I'm actually really passionate about this topic. So a little bit about my background that informs this is I grew up in Montana. I mentioned that, but I was a part of a really small mission-based church. It was started by, well, not really small. It had like 100 people, which is the size of most churches in America. But compared to what I've been a part of lately, it's, fairly small. But it had about 100 to 125 people. It was a incredible place to grow up spiritually. I'm so thankful for that church family and still love to visit it. Still see people I know from when I grew up there 50 years ago. It's just a beautiful testimony of what local church really can be like. But no one worked at the church. So the person who founded the church was an electrician, full-time electrician. He had a heart for young people and had started a youth group in the small little town. The town's called Lolo, Montana. Like the name describes everything. There was like one stoplight, a grocery store, a bar, and a Tasty Freeze, which is like a Dairy Queen. So it just was
so funny.
It's very small, and so he started a youth group, but the youth group took off, and the parents of the kids asked if he would start a church. So kind of reluctantly, he started a Sunday morning church, and the church grew and has now been around for, I think, 50 or 60 years. It's one of the key stakeholders in Western Montana. And so when I was growing up, no one got paid. He didn't get paid. Not until I was like later in my life did he get like a couple $100 stipend for gas to be a pastor. So I just thought you grew up learning the Bible and donating like all your time and money that you had extra to the church. And actually, I think if we did that, it'd probably be a really better way of doing ministry. But in the Old Testament, ministry and spiritual authority was really formalized, and it was also really localized. So there's like a building you go to, there's a person you have to talk to, there's roles and responsibilities. It gets handed down through certain family, bloodlines. In the New Testament, part of what Jesus does is he busts all of that open. He tears the veil. He's like, now you will no longer worship in a building. You will worship in spirit and truth. And so what he's talking is that really the kingdom of God now lives in us. We don't go to church. We don't go and do ministry in certain places. We all are ministers of the gospel. We all are carrying around the kingdom. We all are filled with the Holy Spirit. Everything we do is ministry. Everything that we do everything as if unto the Lord. That's New Testament living. Now, the lure of Old Testament thinking, like you're saying, I kind of think back to it, or I want... New Testament thinking really is when we want to be able to point to something that other humans can recognize. We want to be able to show. We want to be able to prove. We want to be able to have something concrete. This is oftentimes why motherhood feels like such a kind of bewildering experience, is you're like, I don't even know if I'm doing a good job. Like, I have no feedback. Like, I don't have a report card. I don't have a performance review. I don't even know if what I'm doing is going to show up in therapy in 15 years that I have to pay for. Like, how do I know? We don't have something concrete to point to, and we like to have proof that what we're doing is the right thing. But in the New Testament, God says that's not how we're going to keep track. We're going to like track a different way. And it's hard for us sometimes to change our mind about that. So in the New Testament, he talks about calling. Now, this is not explicit. This is just sort of how I've learned to describe it. In the New Testament, Jesus talks a lot more about like primary calling and secondary calling is how the faith and works movement talks about it. Our primary calling is to follow Jesus. That means to walk like Jesus walked, to live like Jesus lived, to love people the way Jesus loved. That's our primary calling. And if we pursue Christ likeness, if we pursue sanctification, that takes care of like 80% of our decisions. So should I cheat on my taxes? No. Should I have an affair? No. Should I, whatever, like all of the kind of like godly characteristics are sort of enraptured in that idea of being a disciple and being Christ-like. And so a lot of the pressure of my life gets decided through that primary calling. Now, we also have a secondary calling. It's about 20%. And those things we have a lot of freedom with. So if you think of walking with God as like being in a big giant playground, there's a fence around the playground, but you get to be on the slide, or you get to swing on the swings, or you can go to the sandbox, or you can just sit on the grass and look at the clouds and make shapes in your mind. You can tell stories. You can play hide and seek with other people. You can be by yourself in a corner. You have a lot of freedom to choose in the 20%. And those come down to things like, what career should I pick? Who should I marry? What city do I live in? How many kids should I have? Now, God has times when he calls us to specific things, but more often than not in that 20%, it's really secondary to our primary calling. That's why it's secondary. So if we focus our mind and our heart on primary calling, God, who can I love today? Who can I share an encouraging word with today? Who can I point to you? Who can I pray with? How can I honor you in what I do? How do I do everything without mumbling and grumbling, right? Like even if I just do that one verse, it's a lot of work to go through the whole day and never complain or grumble. If I put my energy to the primary calling, the secondary calling pieces really kind of fall into place. God opens a door and he shuts 7 doors. And you're like, what should I do? Well, I guess this is my only option. I guess I'll take this job because these 3 things I wanted I got turned down for. And this one job that I didn't really think would be good is the only option I have. I guess I'll walk through that open door. That's how we get that concept of open and closed doors. But it doesn't really work if you're not pursuing your primary calling. If our society actually wants to bank calling on the lower 20%. We want to be like, God, tell me what job to take. Tell me where I should move. What impact am I going to have? Jesus doesn't really spend his time telling us those things. He says, do your primary calling, throw the rock into the middle of the lake, and I will be in charge of the ripples. I will be in charge of multiplying it. I will be in charge of taking your small effort, your 2 fish and 5 loaves, and I'm going to multiply that to feed 5,000. There's my little work, and then there's his big work. And we spend a lot of time in that second 20% trying to figure out what the big work is going to be, as if he is holding us to that. That's not really our job. Our job is the little precise Jesus work, and then his job is to take it and multiply it, and we get to be along for the ride.
So what I hear you saying is that the primary calling is the things that you are doing every single day.
That's
the
right.
Small acts of obedience. But those ultimately get multiplied. That the Lord will open doors and shut doors because of that. And then that it's interesting though, because in my mind goes, I want to call the secondary calling the primary.
Yep.
Like, oh, it starts out as the secondary, then turns into your primary, but it's actually reversed, which is really beautiful, because that means that no matter what you do, like God is using it.
That's right.
For his good.
That's right.
Wow.
It's a different, it's upside down. I mean, that's why I love the name of your podcast. It is the upside down world of calling and ministry, because actually the way I go throughout my day and the way I care for my body and the way I love my family and the way I take time for my neighbor and the way I go for a walk to reconnect with God in the middle of my day, those are the things he sees and those are the things he honors. And when you get the primary calling things right, because you've been trustworthy with what seem like small things, the small things lead to big things. And when you master the small things, he can actually entrust you with big things. Most people go after the big stuff and they figure out, once I get wherever, I'm going to figure out how to take a Sabbath, or I'm going to figure out how I'm going to volunteer in my church, or I'm going to figure out how to be the parent I know I should be. We think of it chronological instead of thinking of it as holistic and dependent on the small things being done well.
Mm-hmm. So what would you say to the person that's been very faithful in their primary calling for years and years, but feels like deep down there's more, and that they're ready for whatever God has next, but has not revealed that to them, or there's just a gut feeling that there's something else, but it's not quite revealed to them yet.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, God often gives us callings and inklings and a sense of something way before it ever happens. If you look all throughout Scripture, there's a calling to David to be king. And then look at his life after his calling before he actually becomes king. It's decades and it's torturous. Saul is after him. He's in battles all the time. Like, it's not a joyful kingship right away. And so the distance between feeling like there's something more, or sensing something, or God has put something in your heart and you want there to be more, and the realization of that is often, in fact, I would say 99.9% longer of a wait than we think it is or we think it should be. And so that's the posture I think of in those times is I want active surrender. I don't want to just like give up, but I don't want to make it happen. I don't want to strive and try to be Sarah where I'm like, okay, I'm supposed to have a baby. Let's have a baby. How do I get a baby? Come here, Hagar. We're going to have a baby. Like, we can do that to ourselves, right? We're like, God said to do this, and out of obedience, I'm going to actually take matters into my own hand. What I want to do is I want to be actively surrendered. So God, like, it's your thing. It's your time. If I heard you wrong, then that's on me. Like, I give it to you. I lay it down before you. I offer it to you. I'm surrendered. If it never happens, I will not be sad or disappointed or mad at you. I'll just figure something else came up, or it was me, or right. But I'm going to be active in it. I'm going to actively surrender. And then I'm going to be like, but what do I do today? Is there something you have for me today? How do I stay faithful in the daily? And so if I have a sense that, gosh, I would really love to have a podcast one day or be an influencer, I would love to do that one day, then probably you should spend time on social media. Probably you should be writing. Probably you should be reading things about the stuff you want to talk about. You can do a lot of preparation without making something happen. But to sit back and do nothing and be irritated or grow bitter or be frustrated isn't the right attitude either. So stewarding the in-between is where most character and also most muscles are built for the job required of you. Again, to look at David, if you think about what he did, this is when he tackled the lion and went and fought Goliath and, shepherded sheep for a really long time. God was forming in him a warrior, a leader, and a shepherd, the kind of king God was creating the Israelites to have for the first time. If he'd have shirked out on shepherding or not gone on with Goliath or not, run away from the lion and the bear, he wouldn't be the leader God was shaping him to be. And so part of that's why it's faith journey. It's not a job. It is a walking with the Lord as he opens and closes doors and prepares us in ways we wouldn't expect to. And sometimes the crisis you're in right now, God didn't design it, but he is actually going to use it to prepare you for whatever is next. And so even embracing the things that feel like they're keeping you from it is part of how we walk in faith and steward what God has given us.
That's so good. Yeah. This year, over the past year of creating this podcast, over and over, I felt like the Lord would put on my heart just to put in the mileage. Just keep recording, keep practicing. No matter how influential the person is on the other side, it does not matter. I need to put in the work of knowing how to interview, knowing how to be a good podcaster. And even today is the next step of I'm doing a digital one. And I'm like, okay, hopefully it works, but that's just been the constant encouragement of my heart. Because there are times where I'm like, Lord, is anyone even listening? Mm-hmm. Who's paying attention? And it doesn't matter. just keep putting in the mileage, keep practicing, keep getting better at this. And when the time is right, and maybe it will never grow past what it is. I don't know. But I do know that the Lord's told me to do a thing. And the only way to do it is to do it.
So I'll tell you a quick story about something just exactly like that. So I have always been a reader. I'm not really a fiction reader. I'm a nonfiction reader, but I love learning. I love reading. I don't know that I loved school, but I loved learning in school. And so I always kind of had this idea that I would love to write a book. And so I kind of laid that down, especially when I had a baby. I was sort of like, well, this is a long shot now, but I kind of laid down this idea of like, I would really love this, Lord. I feel like I can write. I've got affirmation about writing in school in the past, and I don't know what to write about. And so I'd like think of ideas and I'd journal about it, or I would work on this. Or one time I tried to get a magazine article published in, a ministry that it was really well known about families, and I got rejected. And I was just like, oh, how does all this work? And I would meet someone in the publishing world and be like, oh, I've thought of writing a book, and they'd meet with me and then nothing would happen with it. And so this is over like 20 or 30 years. I've had this kind of dream or desire, but I don't really know how to access it. I didn't want to go spend thousands of dollars and go to some writing conference because that didn't seem like, I don't know, that just didn't seem the right way. So I made a couple book proposals. They got rejected because they didn't like my idea. No one knew who I was. I had no platform. And so anyway, this is my experience. And so again, I just always that active surrender of like, God, if you want it to happen, you're going to have to show me what to do. But I've got a big plate. Part of my story is my husband had a lot of chronic illnesses. So I had to work full time. I couldn't be the stay-at-home mom I thought I would be. We only were able to have one child instead of a big family. He wasn't able to work for a long time, so I had to go back to work full time. And so all of these pieces just felt like they were keeping me from what I thought God had for me. And so I kind of just tried to embrace this idea of like, Lord, it's up to you, right? I'm going to try to be the best wife I can be. I'm going to be the best mom I can be. I'm going to be the best minister that I can be. These are the things you've given me. I live all the way across the country from my family, so I can only visit my parents once a year. That's the best I can do as a daughter. And I felt like I wasn't really great at anything. Nothing was ideal. Nothing was where it should be. And there were so many things on my to-do list that I never, ever got to. But I tried to just stay faithful. I tried to ask the Lord to show me if I had the wrong priorities. I tried to do the most important things and let the rest go. But when this would creep up, I would just kind of like resurrender it and just be hopeful, but not work on it. And so, like I said, a few years ago, I transitioned off. I started doing consulting, working with people around multi-site, and this issue around women came up. And the way the book came together was really just a testimony of how God honors this kind of principle. So I was working with this group called Leadership Network, and I was working with all these churches, and I was doing this research around women. And again, not a topic I would ever write about. Never once in my journal was I like, I should write a book for women. Like, I just not a topic. In fact, in my world, being a champion of women was actually how you lost leadership credibility, because now you had an agenda for women. And so I kind of stayed away from that like a 10-foot pole, but I couldn't deny that it was blocking these churches. And so I pulled together the research, and this company that I did this part-time contract for had a publishing agreement. And so I went to my boss and I said, I have this idea that maybe could help other churches. Would you take a look at this and tell me if you think I should I like try to publish it myself? Should I write a paper on it? Like, what advice do you have? And he goes, you know what? I'm meeting with the publisher people next week. Let me just run the idea by them and see what they think. Well, after his meeting, I got an invite for a Zoom call with the head of HarperCollins Christian Publishing. And so I'm like on this Zoom call. Now, granted, I've had like 3 clients that I've done some Google searching for, right? This is my extent of expertise on this topic, other than I am a woman. And I work in churches. And so I'm on this call, and it was like so classic. He had like a French beret. He talked with a big gruffy voice and was like a chain smoker. And he's like, Katie, we think you're really talented. We think this could be really great. What do you tell me about yourself? And I'm like, well, I have this degree and I've done this for this many years. And here's what I was kind of wondering. He's like, great. I'm going to send you a contract. Can you have it written by May, which was like 5 months away? And I was like, yes, absolutely. I have no idea how to write a book. I don't know if you can get it done in May. Now I realize, now that I'm done with it, this is stuff that people do like their doctoral dissertation on, and they take like 3 to 5 years to write a book like this. So I'm saying yes because it feels like an open door. And I'm like, if God opens a door, I say yes and walk through it. We see what happens. So I already in a full schedule, again, husband, kid. Now I'm doing my own business, which is actually not easier than working for someone else. And now I'm going to squeeze a book into it. And sure enough, God, like, I did a Google search. I'm like, conferences about women leading in churches. And I had 3 conferences that only are offered like either every other year or every 3 years. And they all fit into my schedule. I was able to go to all these workshops. I met all these people. I did all these interviews. I sent a survey out to get like hopefully 10 or 12 people. I had 1,200 people reply to the survey. It was just like God took my measly little efforts between car line and, trying to go to doctor's appointments and just like multiplied it. And then the book hit right on the heels of the Me Too Church Too movement, and it took off on me. And now I've been doing this work about this topic for the last 9 years. And so for me, I look back at that and it feels like it came together in just like one fell swoop. And I think other people would look at that and be like, it's about networking. It's about asking. It's about like keeping your whatever up. And I'm like, no. This is about knowing that when Ethan was 1 and I was choosing to nurse even though I was working, and prioritizing my husband's health appointments and going to his doctor's appointments rather than being on the extra committee at work, and turning down the opportunity for a free doctorate, and prioritizing the right things, even though I had all these other opportunities. Like I couldn't travel for work. I got left out of every conference, out of every trip. I had to leave work by 3:00 to do car line because picking up my kid was important to me, which is when all the great work happens, is after 3:00. I chose to cut my performance in a lot of areas for what I believe God called me to in my, like the top of my secondary calling. Like I know family comes first. I know my walk with the Lord comes first. I'm going to get up and do my quiet time every morning, even if I only got 4 hours of sleep last night. That if I don't do that, I'm not doing that primary calling stuff well. And it's got to flow out of that. That book deal came together because of 20 years of that. Not because I networked right, not because I knew how to advocate for myself, not because I had a great idea. I didn't have any of those things.
And not because you forced your way either.
No, I'm just like, now I asked the question, I did my homework, I said yes when the opportunity came. So there was a piece, that's the active part of surrender. But surrender was 99% of it, and 1% of it was activity in the moment that I knew God had for me. My son was a teenager. My husband had been somewhat healed and was back to work. I was already traveling. It lined up with the work I was doing. I could squeeze it in, and I got to go to those. So it was easier to sense when the time and the opportunities were right. And it's easier to sense what to say no to because I knew what God had called me to in that season. And He honors obedience. Now, it's not perfection. It's not like I did everything right, but I sure had a heart to try and do it right. And that's what He cares about more than anything.
That ministers to me so much in this current season. So thank you for sharing that and sharing your story. And I just also really appreciate that. Though that's a long time. You said 20 years.
Yeah.
And sometimes we get stuck in this. It's not happening fast enough because we live in this digital age, social media world. Things seem to happen overnight when really that's not the case. And it was just your small acts of obedience in your primary calling over and over and over again.
Yeah. So. I would say too, Jessica, when you're growing something or developing something like a platform, there's 2 types of growth and you have to steward both really well. There's the slow, steady growth, which is kind of what I'm talking about. It's the stuff no one sees. It's the day in and day out. It's the sticking with the priorities. It's pruning the right things so the real things can grow. It's knowing that. And then there are big doors that open and big things that happen. And I have a social media platform, like there are posts that take off on you, or suddenly you're the topic everyone wants to hear from for like 6 months. And then after that, it's crickets. Yeah. And so to not be frustrated when you feel like the one viral thing you hit went crazy and then nothing happened after it. Like it's very few people that have a big door open that's a one-time shot that turns into something big. Usually it also requires all of these steady things. And even people I know who have had big things hit and have huge opportunities come at them, at the end of the day, they still have to know how to manage their calendar. They still got to figure out how to like eat and sleep well. They still got to manage their family life. Like those character building pieces of primary calling create a platform and a strong foundation for the big hits. But if all you're looking for is the big hit and you think that's the thing that makes it, any successful influencer or leader or person at the top of their profession will tell you that is what everybody sees, but that isn't actually the thing that got you there or will sustain you there.
I always think of the example of a lot of the people who win the lottery end up bankrupt not that long after because, you win all this money, but you didn't have the habits to sustain it. You still have the same bad spending habits that you had before. But if somebody that won the lottery was already good at budgeting and knew what to do with their money and all that, they probably won't end up bankrupt. They probably would be the right person.
That's exactly right. That is such a great example. That is a really, really great example. Mm-hmm.
Thank you. Put that one in my book.
Yeah, you should use that again and again. That's a good one.
Well, to transition a little, because I know we're already running short on time. Like I explained to you when we were getting ready to record, this whole idea behind Upside Down Influencer is that I just felt like there was a lack of discipleship in this area. But I also am a believer in social media and that people can be called to it. And for a long time, I still believe I'm called to social media. I just didn't know in what way. I have a bunch of one of my random gifts, I don't know why the Lord has given this to me, is that I can think of like a funny idea quickly for a trend that happens. And occasionally I'll get millions of views on videos.
Awesome.
And I thought, I'm supposed to be a YouTuber, or I'm supposed to be, and that's kind of the direction for a long time that I thought I was going to do. And right now, maybe at some point, maybe that's what the Lord will turn some stuff into. But right now, God has me here, and this is the bandwidth that I have. All that to say, I know there are people that do strongly feel called to the online space. Mm-hmm. Do you have any thoughts on maybe how other people could actually be called to social media influence as part of their ministry or leadership? Because I've actually heard so much negativity in this area from leaders and well-meaning pastors, things like that. They're like, no, don't listen to the Christian influencers. But what if somebody does feel called to that area?
I love this question. I 100% agree with you. I think one of the things that people misunderstand a lot of times about calling, and I see this actually with pastors all the time, is calling is really about being called to a people. That's why God calls people. He doesn't call you to a thing. He doesn't call you to a gifting. He doesn't call you to a task. He calls you to serve a people. And particularly pastoral or kind of traditional ministry style callings, not like vocational, but like in the kingdom world, God puts people here and gives them gifts, Ephesians 4, for the edification of the body, to be able to serve humans, serve people. And so social media is simply the latest tool we have for serving people. And so I would encourage you, just like I would encourage a pastor who's kind of in more of a traditional church setting. I meet a lot of people who are like, I'm called to preach. I'm like, no, preaching's a skill. You're called to a people. I'm called to this town. I'm called to this kind of person. I'm called to serve kids. I love families. Like, I'm called to a people group. And one of the tools that God's given me in my toolbox is teaching. But if I can't teach, it doesn't change my calling. It just changes what I do around those people. So in social media, it's an incredible medium. It's actually disrupting the world, but it's particularly disrupting the church world because churches are built on teaching and communication. We are communicator tools. We are a training institution. And just like the internet has changed the way universities and education works, it's also completely disrupting the church world. And pastors and leaders who are like, oh, a new tool in my toolbox because I'm called to communicate the gospel to people who don't know Jesus, or I'm called to edify families, or I'm called to disciple people who are early followers of Jesus, or I'm called to encourage faithful people to use their gifts in ministry. Like the people I'm called to, this is just another tool. And so I think the tweak would be if you're growing up and you enjoy the tool of social media, that's probably the tool God's giving you in your hand. So when he calls Moses to lead the Israelite people and Moses is like, I stutter, I'm not the right person. He's like, what's in your hand? And Moses is like, my staff. He's like, use your staff. And sure enough, when they get to the Red Sea, Moses puts down his staff, and the staff is what parts the water. It's the tool you already have in your hand. So if you love being on social media, if you have ideas that get 1 million views, that's the staff that God has put in your hand. You definitely should be using it. Now, even if you don't know who your people are, that's why you start experiencing. That's why you're doing this podcast, right? Like you have to start experimenting and being like, well, let me try my staff over here. Who likes it? Let me try it in this way. Let me hold it this direction. Does that do anything? Like life is just a big experiment. You're just experimenting and seeing where the fruit is. God, what are you anointing? What are you multiplying? What is it that I show up and I do very little and you do something big? Those are the indicators to be looking at where you spend more and more of your time. Sometimes people get caught in their head that if it's really God's work, it's hard and it's struggling and I have to like really put in this sweat equity. When I'm like, kind of, but that's not really how anointing works. It's not like the little kid had to go catch 5,000 fish. He had to just bring the 2 fish he had. So what do you have and what is God blessing? Who is responding? Who is interacting? Who are you ministering to? Who's God giving you the words that make a difference to someone? That's an indicator of who he's called you to. So I do a lot of life planning that helps people kind of kind of coalesce their calling. And we're always trying to find the who. Who is your passion? Is it people who have gone through abuse? Is it kids who don't have both parents? Is it someone who is in their early 20s and you found the Lord in your early 20s and you know what it's like to be lost and searching? Speak to the people that you are passionate about, that you have a personal connection with, that make you get up and move. One of mine is people who have authority that doesn't see them. So for me, that plays out in women in roles that don't recognize female leaders, but it's also like the 2-year-old in the Target bathroom whose mom is treating him horribly. Like I could take her down. I'm looking at that 2-year-old. I'm like, you did such a good job washing your hands. I don't care what your mother is grumbling about right now. Like I see you and you're doing a good job. So who is the profile of person and how do I use whatever tools God's given me to do that? Like you're becoming a mom, you're going to find that God puts people in your path around motherhood like that are the people you're called to. Not every mom, but some of them. It will be a new tool in your toolbox, the bond of motherhood, just like social media, just like a platform, just like a job, just like the neighborhood you live, just like the family God put you in. All of those are places where God wants you to serve the people he's called you to.
I love that outlook because I think it's easy to get trapped in the idea of like just wanting to be a social media influencer for the sake of being an influencer. But I love when you attach, like, who are the people that you are serving? It gives it so much more purpose. Mm-hmm. So what questions should somebody ask God before trying to pursue influence online? Because you can feel called and start putting things out there. But like we use, like with the lottery example, there's probably things you should be asking yourself that if I got this following tomorrow, how do I steward this?
Mm-hmm. Well, I think if you're thinking about it specifically from a spiritual standpoint, the basic sort of skill sets of a disciple that Jesus calls us to, right? Matthew 28, go into all the world and preach the gospel, teaching them everything and how to obey my commands. And so in that is like, do I know how to articulate my faith? Do I know how to pray with someone to receive Christ? Do I know how to teach them how to obey Jesus's teachings? Like, can I answer people who ask me, why do I have the hope that I have? Like, those are all sort of the profiles of what a fully developed disciple does. Now, if you don't know how to do those things, or you've never seen those things done, I wouldn't say you have to wait to do something till you figure it out, but that's what you're learning. That's what you're pursuing. And so as you post something, let's say you post a Bible verse, or you make a video and you kind of post your thoughts on an encouraging word for the day. And people reply like, oh my gosh, thank you so much. I really needed to hear that. I'm on my way to my son's school and I'm really nervous about the meeting I'm about to do. You can pipe in there and be like, hey, let me pray for you right now. Type out a prayer, record a prayer, do an audio recording for them, and take time to minister to them and their actual needs. See people, serve them, use the spiritual disciplines and practices that we have in the Christian community, in the body of Christ. It's all the kind of like one another's, love one another, forgive one another, help one another, serve one another. Those are the ways that we interact with people on behalf of the kingdom. And so practicing those, they're not always easy. They can be really intimidating. If you've never prayed out loud for someone before, it can be really intimidating. So start by writing it out. And if you have to do 17 edits, that is really okay. And then move yourself, once you've done a bunch of those for a couple months, move yourself to doing an audio recording. And when you're at church or when you're at the grocery store, if you see people with a need, ask to pray for them or ask to help them, or don't allow yourself to be a one-dimensional disciple where I only use one tool, social media. You have to be a well-rounded disciple, because social media, a lot of times online relationships turn into real person relationships. And so,
Exactly.
now doesn't have to be the goal, but it often happens. And so as people start following you and then you like go to a town to speak at some place you've been asked to speak to, they're going to come and want to meet you in person. And so don't just build skill sets that are through a screen. Build holistic skill sets. Become a full developed follower that can use any tool in your toolbox, in person, online, late at night, first thing in the morning, like stewarding all of that, and give yourself the freedom to start and the challenge to keep growing in all of those things.
When I used to lead at our church, there was a ministry called 1825, which is 18 to 25-year-olds. And whenever I would have conversations with any of them who would ask, like, hey, I would like to become a social media influencer, kind of like how you were mentioning. One of my first questions I would ask them is like, well, what are you doing right now? Like in your real life first?
Yeah.
Maybe you should be leading a disciple group. Are you serving in these areas? Because don't get me wrong, there are some people who are strictly only doing things online, but I do find that the online is almost more of the overflow of what you're already doing in your real life, and the habits that overflow, and will actually make you an even better leader online if you're doing those things in person too.
Well, and I think, I even think I probably did this in my answer, but we don't even need to think about it as two different things. They're just two different ways of connecting with people. It's a real person on the other side. And so the more comfortable you can get with all of the environments, and the better you're going to serve people. This is really where local church comes in. So if you've never learned how to pray out loud for someone, find a church if you're not a part of one and join the altar prayer team and just get good at praying for people. If you don't know how to teach scripture, sign up and be in their school of ministry, or jump into a small group and be a student in a small group and then volunteer to lead a small group. This is where you gain the skills and you get the feedback from people who are wanting to develop you. So online doesn't really give you feedback. They either give you, thumbs up or thumbs down. It's either approval or you're silent. People who love you and want to develop you are going to give you feedback, which helps you grow. So if you're, online is kind of the place you go to scale what you know how to do. And if you haven't learned how to do it, it's hard to scale something you haven't learned how to do. And again, you can learn as you go, but you want to make sure you're actually offering the things that are mature gifts. Like Jesus had to grow in wisdom and stature. We all have to do that too. So what are all the places you can learn? And then grow and learn in all those places.
So good. Well, we have about 6 minutes left, and I have two more questions for you.
Okay.
What does it mean to you to be an upside down influencer?
Well, I think for me, it's probably that kind of active surrender posture. I think you can probably tell, I have energy for things. I see things really clearly when I talk sometimes and it comes out really like authoritative, even if I don't really know what I'm talking about. Like there's leadership in me. And I think early on in my Christian walk, especially, I spent a lot of time trying to figure out what I was going to do for God. Like, all right, I'm a Christian. My life matters. God, what am I going to do for you? And I worked really hard to make things happen that would be pleasing to God. And And really, God broke me of those things. And that's why this idea of active surrender is so personal to me, because I was active, but I was not surrendered. Or I was surrendered because I basically had given up and then I thought it would never happen. So this tension between activity and surrender is like a healthy tension I lean into. And that feels upside down, because as I've grown my business and as I've expanded my leadership, I've hired coaches or tried to get advice from people along the way. But anytime someone gives me advice that puts me in one category or the other, and I find that people tend to be one or the other. They tend to be like, you got to go make these things happen, write your 3-year goals and da-da-da-da-da, and what kind of income do you need this month to make those things happen? And I'm like, that's not me. And then I meet other people who are like, let's just pray about that. And maybe if you fast for the next, 800 days, and I'm like, well, I mean, I believe in prayer and fasting, but like, that's not me either. And so for me, the upside down is going like, Lord, I want a hand in both. I want an obedient hand in both. You show me the way. And that really requires daily connection and confession and a re-surrender and then a reactivation on the daily. And so that is a very upside down strategy I've learned as I've moved through this space and as I've gotten older.
I'm so nervous the call is just going to end. I don't know what happens when it hits 4:00. Okay. But it's like just going to hard stop. I've never used this program before.
I don't think so. I think it'll keep going.
But you were about to launch something of your own. I mean, you have many other things, but I would love for especially the people that may not know you to hear about what you're about to do.
Well, sure. So I mentioned I've been working with churches trying to help create environments for female leaders that are more healthy and productive. And but as I've worked with churches, and actually I'm really encouraged by the movement of that and the openness that leaders have to more female leaders and on stage and in roles of influence and on leadership teams. It's been really exciting, but it's challenging for women to move into those spaces. We don't have a lot of role models. A lot of women have grown up being told this is wrong for them to do, especially in church environments or people from a faith background. And so I've really decided to kind of take on the woman's journey in that also now, about how female church leaders can step forward with confidence. How do you learn the leadership you need to be able to lead at higher levels? So we have a new ministry called Female Church Leaders that we're launching. You can learn more about it at femalechurchleaders.com or on Instagram at Female Church Leaders. And we have a new podcast, the Female Church Leaders podcast, that I'm really excited. That's going to start a weekly kind of shot in the arm for women who are doing ministry in church settings. So yeah, thanks for the shout out. If you know anyone doing ministry or on a church staff or leading at a high level, I'd love for you to pass that along to them.
That's amazing. I'm excited to tune in. Even though I'm not on a church staff, I just feel like there's so much. I've gleaned so much from you from this short time that we've had together. I can only imagine what I could learn hearing from you on a podcast.
Well, come on, girl. You'd be more than welcome. It's definitely leadership from a faith perspective. So it's not only applicable to church leaders. I am trying to target that because I feel like it's a really underserved population. Again, that's my people, right? The people I feel called to.
Yes.
But then God uses that in a lot of different ways and helps a lot of people with our efforts. So I would love that.
Well, thank you so much for coming on this podcast. I had a lot of fun, and it's been really nice getting to know you a little bit.
You too, Jessica. Thanks for what you're doing. Thanks for being obedient in your own ways, and prayers for a great new baby coming into your family, and also how you balance all of that. Like, just remember,
I already have one. I already have one. So this is going to be my second, and I'm like, oh my gosh.
Yeah. Well, and I tell women all the time, like a lot of times men, when they talk about calling, they make it sound like it's their work. But women, we have multiple callings, and God doesn't make them compete. So he lines them up, and they pace differently for women. And so just give yourself freedom to pace your callings and put the most important one at the top of the priority list for this season, and then you can rearrange later when you need to.
Thank you so much for listening. To follow along with us and to hear about other things that we're doing, you can find us on Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, and YouTube.